Hey guys, it's Hunter. Welcome back to another video. I'm doing this thing where I batch film videos now, so this is going to be like the 5th video in a row where my shirt is exactly the same. My voice is also going to crack a lot because I went to Slipknot yesterday. Regardless, this is an Eastman SB59V, and wow is the only way that I can describe this thing. This is one of the best guitars that I have ever played. I'm not even going to bother with a more detailed intro because I just want to get into it. Let's take a closer look. Before we get into the review, I want to give a shout out to Kim Yu and the rest of the amazing supporters over on Patreon. I'm sorry, I have no idea how to pronounce your last name without completely butchering it. Utenhof? Utenhof? Please don't depledge. Anyways, if you want to directly support what I do as well, you can do so over on Patreon and get some bonus perks as well. You can set limits if you want to, even like $1 a month. It really helps out. And now let's get into the review. So Eastman has been creating a lot of buzz recently in the online guitar world. Ever since Gibson released their disastrous Play Authentic video, there's been a bit of an emphasis in the online community on finding the best authentic alternatives. Now, even though that meme has long since run its course on the internet, a few weeks may as well be a decade, the brands that it uncovered are now in the limelight and they are not going away. So in a way, thank you, Gibson. Now, one such brand is Eastman, and holy now, full disclosure, in the interest of transparency, I was given this guitar to keep, but this review was not paid, though at times it may sound like it to some people because, spoiler alert, I am going to gush about this guitar. Like, I love the shit out of it. Alright, so that disclaimer out of the way, why do I love this guitar? Well, as I said at the beginning, this guitar is just straight up one of the best guitars I've ever played. It's also one of the best looking guitars I've ever seen as well. I know I've been saying that a lot lately about good looking guitars, but to be fair, the visual quality lately has been very high. So let's run through the specs. We've got a one-piece mahogany body, a one-piece set mahogany neck, and an ebony fingerboard with a 12-inch radius. And then it has this ridiculously gorgeous solid flame maple cap. The trapezoid inlays are all proper mother of pearl, and I don't know what it is about them, but even compared to the mother of pearl in my other guitars, my 72 Les Paul included, they are incredibly colorful. Not only that, it looks and feels custom shop quality too. Like, as soon as you pick it up, you can tell this is an amazingly built instrument. The weight is only about 8 pounds. Lightweight is something they put a lot of emphasis on even during wood selection. The rough cutting is done by machine, and then the rest, all the carving, all the profiling, has been completely finished with hand tools. That's incredible when you think about the sheer amount of human work hours that has to go into each guitar. There's nothing wrong with using machines for everything. In fact, that's generally a better way to guarantee consistency, but the fact that they've done it without relying so much on machines speaks volumes about the skills of the craftsman, and also means that a human eye was paying attention to details at more points during the build process. And that additional close observation really shows. Then this finish is unlike anything I've ever tried. That's because while most guitars use poly on the affordable side and nitro on the higher end, this has hand-applied varnish, traditionally reserved for classical stringed instruments like violins or cellos or mandolins. It is so thin and beautifully aged. There's a little bit near the forearm on both the top and side, a couple of scratches below the bridge, and some light simulated buckle rash in a couple places on the back. It's the right kind of aging. It looks old and well loved, not beat to shit. I have a friend who used to play this old, heavily used upright bass, and that's what this guitar feels like to the touch. Like, the finish is actually amazing. Even though it's thin, it still manages to really bring out the figuring in the flame maple. Right now it comes in black, amber, gold burst, and this, which is the classic finish. If you're not a fan of the aged look or you want a more traditional feel, Eastman also offers nitro and vintage nitro finishes, which are slightly lower priced. I was most curious about the antique varnish though, because I'd never tried it, and so that's why I requested this one. To match the aged finish, Eastman has used nickel hardware from Godot's Relic series. One, they look fantastic. The bridge, the tailpiece, the tuners, even the strap buttons. They're dull, they look the part, especially with these ugly, vintage-correct, snot-colored buttons. Two, and more importantly, Godot makes some high-quality components. They look old, but they're super reliable. None of the functionality has been compromised by the aging process. The bridge saddles move freely, and the tuners have smooth motion. I do wish, though, that the switch had been artificially aged as well to keep with the visual theme. Then the nut is made of bone. It's been beautifully cut and rounded completely flush with the neck binding. I mean, you rarely, if ever, get to say this, but the nut is gorgeous. It's a gorgeous nut. That's the level of attention to detail involved with this guitar. Tuning is a completely smooth experience, no friction, no slippage, just yeah. Going back to the visual theme of the guitar, even the latches and hinges and all the metal parts on the included hardshell case have been dulled and treated. The outside of the case is like fuzzy, it almost feels like velvet. And then on the inside there's this nice gray plush. It looks like a case fitting for this guitar. I mean, get it? Because it's form-fitting as well? Yeah, sorry, that was stupid. Forget that. In terms of case accessories, it's pretty Spartan. Allen wrench to adjust the truss rod, case lock keys, and the certificate of authenticity. As the name alludes to, it is inspired by a certain 59 guitar, and back then they didn't have strap locks, but at over $2,000, it would have been nice to have some anyways to protect your investment on stage. I get why they didn't, but it's not really a vintage guitar. It was made in August of 2019. Moving on to playability, the fretwork is impeccable. They're well crowned, well polished, level, beautifully rounded on the edges. A lot of fretwork is good, but this is art. The Jescar frets are also not tiny, like a lot of, quote, vintage-inspired guitars tend to use. They're not that tall, but they are quite wide, meaning that fretting notes is incredibly easy. The neck is kind of like a medium C shape, not one of those baseball bats found on a lot of vintage instruments, but not super thin, shreddy neck either. It's the Goldilocks compromise. It's just right. The super thin finish minimizes friction on the back of the neck, then the well-polished frets and well-oiled fingerboard meant my fingers were just gliding up and down the neck. The one thing I don't like, and probably my biggest complaint, is the neck joint. Now I understand that it's a vintage-inspired instrument, so there won't be a modern cutaway, but this one is particularly aggressive. Once it hits the 15th fret, it's almost like a 90-degree angle, and the heel is unusually sharp, almost like what you find on an acoustic. It's not unbearably uncomfortable, but it's not exactly great either. Whack neck joint aside, the playability is effortless in parts of the materials, the fit and finish, but also the setup. Out of the box, the action was super low and somehow no fret buzz. Intonation, perfect. The theme of uncompromising quality continues with the electronics. Switchcraft is used for the switch and output jack, CTS for the pots, and then we've got orange drop capacitors. The switch is oddly satisfying. The humbuckers are Lawlers with aged nickel covers, which are all hand-wound in Tacoma, Washington. Here's what the guitar sounds like running through the Marshall DSL 100H. So the Imperial series are Lawler's vintage PAF-inspired line of pickups. There's high wind and low wind versions for hotter and chiller pickups, respectively. These, though, seem to be modified just for Eastman guitars. They're medium output Alnico 2 powered humbuckers that have been lightly wax potted. While generally most people don't look to PAF style pickups for that high gain riffage, they're super warm, and I actually really like them for even my style of music that leans more to the aggressive side of things. So as I said at the beginning, this is one of the best guitars that I've ever had the opportunity to play. The fit and finish is flawless, and as a result, not only does it look unreal, but the playability is effortless. At almost $2,500, it's definitely not cheap. But if you're looking to really treat yourself, this is the one worth saving up for. The one, I guess, downside is that, like most guitars in this price range from up-and-coming brands, the resale value is not great. But honestly, once you get one, you're probably not going to be selling it. So if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and hit the like button. These are just my opinions, and I'd love to hear yours, so leave them in the comments. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell. That way YouTube lets you know when I upload a new video. Thanks to Eastman for sending this guitar over, and to Luke for mixing everything. Links to social media, merch, and the Discord server are in the description. As always, thanks so much for watching. You've been awesome, and I'll see you for the next video.